Welcome, everybody, to Wall Street Reporter's next super stock company spotlight, where we bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. Companies going after massive multi-billion-dollar market opportunities that are at a key inflection point and have multiple catalysts in place. Today, we'll bring you a brand new company, a debut on our platform, which we believe could be the next 10-bagger plus, Nova Mentis Life Sciences. And today, we have a special interview with Dr. Marvin Hausman. He is the Chief Medical Officer. Marvin, welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here, Jack. Thank you.
Absolutely, Marvin. So, our investor audience, they have, we've brought them a lot of winning stocks in the last few years, stocks that have increased between 1,000 and 5,000%. And, they're very, very short attention spans. They want to know right away, what is the, can Nova be a 10-bagger, a stock that increases 1,000%, 10x? First, can it get there? And what exactly is the path to get there? So I want to start off right with that, and then we'll dive into the actual business of the company. We'll go into all the details, but we want to get people hooked into the interview to get their attention. So let's start with that. Can this stock be a 10-bagger?
I mean, that's a good question. Most investors like to go to sleep at night, wake up the next morning and see they doubled their money. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why investors risk their money. I've been at this game a long time. I had a company on the New York Stock Exchange, Medco Research. I had several companies on NASDAQ. Being a 10-bagger is not that difficult. And in fact, Nova Mentis has great potential to be a 10-bagger. It's based on the drug you're developing. Are you a classic biotech company? And in addition, what is the field of medicine that you're in? In the case of Nova Mentis, we've chosen an unmet medical need called autism spectrum disorder. There are no drugs for autism spectrum disorder. So if we're successful, and I think we will be a 10-bagger. Biotech companies going into phase 2 usually are 10-baggers.
Okay, so we're only talking about phase 2. We're not even talking about actual commercialization. So if you go from where you are now to, let's call it phase 2, there is the value of the company increases 10x, and then obviously with commercialization, autism. First of all, let's talk about that. So from what I understand, you're developing a treatment for autism and something called Fragile X syndrome. And this is based on psilocybin. So how big is the autism? I mean, we keep hearing about autism. For some reason, I remember, years ago, I never heard about autism. Well, in the last 10, 15 years, it seems like, it's everywhere. It's like endemic.
Exploding. You don't know why. Some people think it's environmental. Some people think it's pollution, radiation. Drugs, response to drugs during pregnancy. It's an unknown entity right now. They seem to throw everything into it. Any child with attention deficit disorder, they don't know what the diagnosis is. It's autism. But that opens up the market for us. So we are developing psilocybin, which is an hallucinogenic Schedule 1 compound, which is in nature. I mean, it's there for a reason in nature. And coming back to your original question, the very important thing that you need to have is proof of efficacy. If you're a classic pharmaceutical company, which we are, and you manufacture a drug, it has to be reproducible. Every time you manufacture, it has to be the same exact certificate of analysis. If you have 99.8% purity, it has to every time be 99.8% purity. And what's also very important is when you test the efficacy, it works. And it works in a reproducible fashion. And so we have taken the position with an unmet medical need, such as autism spectrum disorder, they say ASD, short form for autism spectrum disorder. And we chose a lab in Rome Tre University, Rome, Italy, that has some of the best models for autism in the world. Dr. Viviana Treza is the head of the department and she's a well-regarded scientist. And we've tested our compound there 5 times. And every time we've tested it, it has worked perfectly. And we chose Fragile X for a very specific reason. When you shoot a gun or an arrow, you want to hit the bullseye. You want to narrow your claims down to a very specific disorder. Fragile X is a genetic specific disorder that's part of autism spectrum disorder. And you know, every time you have a Fragile X, it's a genetic marker, you have a definite diagnosis. And that will help us to get our drug approved and will help us go to commercialization.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, it seems like you've done this before. You've gotten drugs to market in the past. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in getting drugs to commercialization through the FDA
Yes,
process?
yes. So what is your question, Jack, with
What's
the
it?
FDA process?
Yeah, sorry. So the mic cut out. Okay, so I was saying that you've done this process before. Getting drugs through the FDA process onto the market. So what exactly is how difficult is the path for Nova Mentis to get your drug to that process?
Well, that's a great question. For me, it's not difficult. I've done it 6 to 8 times, six with drugs, two with medical devices. There's a pathway. If you know it, it's like you walk down the road that you've walked before. It's very specific steps, and one of them is to pick your diagnosis, pick your disease carefully. Second one is pick the drug you want that has to be directly applicable to that disease process. And that's what we're doing in Nova. Pfizer does it, Merck does it. The biggest companies know the pathway. We know the pathway in Nova.
Okay. So what exactly is the path? What happened between now? How long is it going to take? Let's say for you to get to that 10x, whether it's a phase 2 or what needs to happen basically? What are the milestones? In other words, like right now, so you have an orphan drug designation right now for this, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, which is very important. Okay, from what I understand, are you the first company that has a psilocybin drug that has an orphan drug designation?
Yes, we're the first, and we have it both in Europe and the United States. The European Medicines Authority, the EMA, and the FDA have, in the US, have given us orphan drug designation for psilocybin in Fragile X syndrome. We're the only company in the world that has that. It's very interesting. When you say 10 bagger, you don't look for the 10 bagger. It happens naturally. What you have to do is have a great organization that's focused on proper drug development. By the way, good drugs never destroy themselves. Poor management destroys good drugs.
Interesting. Okay, so right. I think the history of drug development is littered with drugs that big companies, they give up on a drug being developed and somebody else picks it up and becomes a massive blockbuster, or vice versa, or it's interesting. So now I want to get a little bit.
Well, the small companies like Nova can move quickly. Big pharma, Pfizer, Merck, Moderna is developing vaccines now. They move much slower. We have the ability, we're more agile. We can go to universities, we can acquire technology, and we can develop it and get through phase 1, phase 2 faster than big pharma. Big pharma will then come looking for us in phase 2. If we have a powerful phase 2 study, they're going to come knocking on our door.
Okay, so essentially, the team that you have at Nova Mentis is pretty lean.
Yes, it is. It's a lean machine. We're a very small company. Very few people know about us. I look at us as a diamond in the rough. I've acquired very selective people to surround myself with. For example, Kyle Lambert is a director of artificial intelligence at Nike Corporation. Before that, he was at Intel. So he is going to do our deep machine learning, and we'll do our analytical studies, the statistical analysis. So we're now moving way beyond autism. We're into neuroinflammation. We are specific with respect to our first drug approval, whether it's in Canada or the United States. We're focusing on Fragile X, but diseases are very similar in causation. Diseases of the brain are based on neuroinflammatory markers. And so we're developing a whole data bank, a diagnostic index, and a therapeutic index based on these genetic neuroinflammatory markers. Also, serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter. So the data that we're acquiring for Fragile X syndrome will go into many other degenerative diseases in the brain. Not right away, but in the future. And that's going to be a prime reason for big pharma to be interested in Nova Mentis, because we're not a one-trick pony. We're not just focusing on a disorder. We are to get it through the regulatory, but the technology we're developing encompasses many other areas in brain disease.
So it's basically you have it's not a one shot. It's a platform. It's a drug platform that you have, which eventually you're going to be going after many different indications. Which I want to kind of get into that in a little bit. We'll talk about some of the other markets a little bit down the road. I want to focus in on Fragile X for a second, because I didn't ask the obvious question. What exactly is Fragile X syndrome? Because this is like
it's a genetic knockout. The FMR area of the gene has a mutation, has a knockout. It's a methylation. Methylation is a radical that attaches to that area of the gene, and that causes Fragile X syndrome. There's no question you have a genetic test, and that test is positive, you have Fragile X. And that makes it a lot easier for us to set the pathway. We know which children we're dealing with, even which adults have Fragile X. I did this before in Medco research. I went after specific cardiovascular disorders. One was Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. When we got that approved, then we went into other arrhythmias in the heart. So the pathway is well known. I'm trekking that pathway.
Okay, so what exactly is the symptoms of Fragile X exactly? What's the what is the? It's like it's a type of autism. What exactly is it?
Yeah, the Fragile X children have anxiety disorders. Anxiety is a hyperexcitatory state of your nerves. And that's also autism also. It's a neuroinflammatory disorder, very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder. These first responders, the troops, they have hyperexcitatory, and that leads to the symptoms, anxiety. So Fragile X is a very similar, all of these neurodegenerative diseases are in the same category. So Fragile X has anxiety. It also has cognition problems, memory problems. The other thing is that some of the Fragile X, I think 30% have epileptic seizures because of that genetic problem with the methylation of the Fragile X gene. Epilepsy is part of the problem, seizures.
Okay, how big is the market? So you have an orphan drug designation. So this must be like a small market. Like what's the size of it, would you say?
Oh, it's very small, but that's why it's orphan drug. 1 in 4,000 males have Fragile X syndrome. 1 in 7,000 females have Fragile X syndrome. But that's what I like about it, because we're going to shoot for the bullseye, we're going to get it approved, and then we'll look for other indications.
Okay, and of course, the big thing is once the drug is actually approved, doctors can prescribe it for off-label use for other things, which we've seen happen with everything.
Yeah, the company doesn't want to promote off-label.
Right.
The regulatory agencies don't like that.
Right.
That's not up to us. I mean, we wouldn't advertise off-label use. We'll go and get it approved, commercialize the product, and then doctors have the right. If a patient comes in and there are 2 antibiotics out there, he can choose which antibiotic he wants to use. If the patient comes in and has Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, and we have a cognition improving drug in Fragile X, he could choose to use it in Alzheimer's disease if he wanted to.
Okay. No, so it's very interesting because we've seen, well, maybe you can give some examples, but there have been drugs approved for some very small market, an orphan drug, but it proves to be effective for something else, which is like a much wider multi-billion-dollar market, and which is really how pharma companies make money, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where Well, you take a look at Viagra. I haven't done some of the original research on Viagra at UCLA. Viagra is a nitric oxide expands blood vessels, and so Viagra was developed for hypertension, for high blood pressure. If you stimulate expansion of the diameter of a blood vessel, you lower your blood pressure. It turned out that one of the side effects was erectile dysfunction because of their increasing the diameter of blood flow. It's going to occur in the sexual organs as well. So Merck realized very quickly that it had $100 million drug in high blood pressure, but $1 billion+ drug, maybe it's $5 billion today, in erectile dysfunction. And that's the way it's played. I mean, we did that in Medco. We went on the New York Stock Exchange and ended being bought out by King Pharmaceuticals. I mean, the company started at about $2 a unit in 1982, and by 1998, we sold it for almost $500 million, and we went after orphan drug cardiovascular arrhythmias. Then we went after other cardiovascular conditions. But we did our first NDA in under $2 million in an orphan drug application called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. And then we took the same drug and applied it to other conditions in the heart, and we developed the pharmacologic stressor, the same exact drug in a different dosing, different application. Ended up, patient could lie in bed, have a broken leg, and have as if the patient was on a treadmill for 30 minutes, and all we did is infuse this drug intravenously while the patient was lying in the bed. So it's going to be a great diagnostic tool for people with cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
And that same pathway is what's being followed in NOVA now, not in cardiovascular, but in autism spectrum disorder and Fragile X syndrome.
Okay, so I think this is really critical for investors to hear this, because so you basically, you commercialized the drug, you got it through the FDA approval process for $2 million, which is really, I know this was like in the 80s, but still, today you have, because now you have a lot more technology, so actually the cost, I mean, you have inflation, but still there's a lot of technologies which have reduced costs dramatically, right? So is it possible? Do you think you can get this Fragile X drug to the market for $2 million today?
Yes, yeah, we haven't spent that much. I mean, we're a small company. I think we raised maximum $2 million. We just completed another financing, I think, for $1.5 million Canadian. You don't have to waste money. You have to shoot for the bullseye. We don't have huge salaries. We don't have huge developmental people. Big groups of different, our public relations is very small. Yes, it can be done.
Okay, so basically you've done it before, and we have a path here. Now,
we don't take $1 million salaries.
Right. So
I mean, it's amazing, some of these companies, that you've got to let the birds fly. You can't pull the wings off the bird before it flies.
Right. Well, I think what happens is it's almost like, there's a theory that, work expands to the time you allot to it. And so in other words, if you only have 10 minutes to do a job, you're going to do it in 10 minutes. If you give yourself an hour, you'll take an hour. I think a lot of biotech companies, the last years of technology companies, they've gotten very spoiled because, the bankers only make money as a commission, as a percentage, right? So if they're making 10%, they'd rather raise $100 million for a company than raise $5 million, because they, it's obviously
they like when you lose money, because then you come back to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's companies. Right. So the idea is that biotech companies, they really don't need to spend. They don't need to spend. They probably could spend 70% less. Maybe. Probably. There's a lot of wastage.
Absolutely. I mean, it's way beyond that. I mean, it's almost, it's a shame the way the industry is, but that really allows the opportunity for a company like us. We're a lean machine. We don't waste money. We're going to prove that. We're going to file with Health Canada within the next 45 to 60 days for a phase 2 Fragile X study. It's a 30-day study, 15 Fragile X patients. It's an open clinical study. We'll be able to look at the data without destroying the power of the study. You know, in a phase 3, you're not allowed to look at the data till the end of the study. Well, we're going to know very quickly if our product works. 30 days, we're going to microdose every other day. We're going to restudy the patient every 2 weeks. And in fact, our Fragile X model in Italy showed that the microdose oral therapy that we have was tremendous. I've never seen results like that. In fact, the microdose oral psilocybin treatment in Fragile X models in the rat was 3 times better than the injectable. Unheard of. So something's happening when you give it orally in the intestines with the microbiome, the bacteria. I think we've discovered something, and the world will know more as we get into this study.
You're saying that your treatment is more effective orally in a pill form than through an injection.
Yes, it blew me away. We just got the data. We're filing patents on it because we think this is revolutionary, not only for autism, but for other mental disorders. Something's happening in the small intestine. It's metabolizing the product. It could be creating these neuroinflammatory molecules that are positive, that are migrating up the vagus nerve into the brain. I've done this before in Parkinson's disease with Michael J. Fox Foundation with another natural substance, with another company that I was working with. I think we are onto something. I never expected that an oral compound in the same dose would be 3 times more effective than the same dose injected into a blood vessel.
Okay, so basically, something is happening in the small intestines, in the gut, is it, that affects the brain?
Metabolizing, well, you take a drug, you swallow it, or it goes into the stomach, it then goes into the small intestine. It's metabolized, it's broken down. You have bacteria in your small intestine, and they produce other molecules. Then it goes into the bloodstream, and it goes to the liver. It's called the first pass reaction. Then it comes back into the bloodstream. These results were tremendous. They're so good that we're filing patents on it, and that's going to be the basis of the microdose phase 2 study with Health Canada. And then as soon as we have that study approved, we're going right to the FDA to do the similar phase 2 study in the United States.
Okay, so this phase 2 study,
this is not much money either, Jack.
Okay. Okay. So wait. So the phase 2 study. This is going to be with Health Canada.
Yes.
Okay. And okay. So I just want to repeat again the process because just for the layman investor so they can understand what happens. Like, give us the timeline. What happens? I don't know, a month from now. Give us the whole timeline for the next. Let's call it. How long is this whole thing going to take to get to phase 2?
So the moment we had the positive data on the microdose therapy from Italy, we formed a tactical partnership, which is very important. We felt that we wanted to share what we're doing in Canada. So we formed a tactical pharmaceutical partnership with a CRO, a large CRO in Canada called KGK Science. Okay? We then jointly are developing the regulatory submission. The first thing you do is you want to have a clinical protocol. It's always, you don't want to jump ahead of yourself. The first thing you will design is the clinical study. Once you design the clinical study, then you take the testing behavioral tests that you want to use. And then we're going to add some of these genetic markers, serotonin levels, the neuroinflammatory markers. Right now, it's a 52-page document. At that point, we will submit that to Health Canada and fill out their regulatory submission. But you don't want to jump ahead of yourself. You don't do the regulatory filing till you have a very good protocol that stands up to scrutiny. And then before you go to Health Canada, you need the 1.5 milligram capsules. So we've established a relationship with a small, well-known encapsulator in Canada that is going to produce our 1.5 milligram capsules. So we're about 30 to 40 days away from the capsules, and we're about 2 months away for submission to Health Canada.
2 months?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2 months, you're going to submit the study. With the protocols, the protocols for this is the phase 2.
Protocol's been finished. That's
The
52.
finish. Okay.
And
Okay.
then we have 10 to 12 accepted testing, behavioral tests, cognition, anxiety, anything that's used in the industry for autism and Fragile X. Those are all the protocol.
Okay, and genetic and and you're gonna have, and also this covers what you said, genetic markers.
We're the first company in the world to use these genetic neuroinflammatory markers. No one's ever done that before. We have patents on it. We're using a company called Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is, I think, the largest genetic company in the world. Thermo Fisher and I have worked together to design these primers, 52 genetic markers. We now have produced that. The primers are sitting in a lab in Miami, and we're ready to send specimens to the lab. We've established a relationship with a major university in Florida to do our serotonin analysis. I'm probably going to go on the faculty of the university because they have many autism patients, and I would like to have access to those autism, and being on the faculty will make it much easier for me to get access to the patients.
Okay, so, and when do you see?
Each step is well calculated, and you want to take your time. And remember, if you're playing chess against an equal opponent, he's equal to you. You move a piece, he moves a piece. If you move a piece back, theoretically, you've already lost the game because he's equal to you. The same thing with drug development. Every step should be moving a piece forward, never having a problem, never having to move a piece back. And that's our plan.
Okay, so when will you have the so when are you going to have the results of the phase 2 study?
Well, that's assuming no hiccups with capsule manufacturer, CMC, which is, you have manufacturing process, and then you have your final formulation process, which is called CMC, chemistry, manufacturing. You have to show that when you put it inside a pill, that the substance never changes. So then you have to develop technology to dissolve the capsule and show that the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which you started with, has not changed when it's put inside the capsule. That's what we're doing at the moment. Once we have all that done and we send the submission in to Health Canada, they have about 30 days to respond. Assuming that they accept it and don't have any comments, so in probably 60 to 90 days, we will launch the study in Canada. 15 patients, not a big study. We already have 6 patients we've identified, and we're already launching an observational study, a North American observational study, not a treatment study, to do autism, Fragile X biomarkers. So we don't need regulatory approval. So we have IRB, Institutional Review Board approval. It's 200 autistic patients, including Fragile X, 100 normal, they call them neurotypical, and we're now accumulating the Databank, the neuroinflammatory Databank, and the serotonin Databank. So we're already, and we'll have an announcement shortly, we're already enrolling Fragile X patients into the observational study. Those Fragile X patients will have a priority to be in the Health Canada study. So we assume we're going to have data to announce probably within 6 months.
Okay, so the data, but each step along the way, is a milestone. It's a catalyst for the stock, because as you hit each milestone, the investment story gets de-risked, which is how biotech, this is how they climb that kind of ladder of valuation. So the milestones to watch are, in about 30 days, you're going to have the capsules ready, correct?
30 to 40 days.
30 to 40 days. Okay. After that,
we're signing a CDA, confidentiality agreement, contracts being negotiated. Let's assume 45 days.
Okay, so 45 days. I'll call it 60 days. Let's be conservative. I don't want people to think we're exaggerating. So 60 days. 2 months. After that, the study will be ready 60 days after that, roughly.
We're ready to submit. Day 60,
Okay.
the moment we have those 1.5 milligram capsules, we will send in the submission to Health Canada. You don't see that's a lot of people make a mistake. You send it into the regulatory agency, and then they comment, well, where's your capsules? Now you have to start again. It's better to wait the extra 4 to 5 weeks, make the capsules, then send everything in at once, so they have minimal comments on your study.
Okay, wait, Marv. I just want to be clear on this. Okay, so let's call it from today. Let's say from today, the capsules will be ready 60 days from now.
Yes.
So you go to Health Canada. You go to.
Sorry to interrupt. On day 60, we'll send in the submission forms to Health Canada.
Okay.
We assume 30 to 40 days later, if all goes well, we have an approval. Then we launch the study right away.
Okay. Okay.
We're now trying to line up patients ahead of time. And so we can move quickly and start treating patients, maybe the 6 we already have identified, Fragile X, with our 1.5 milligram capsules. So it's only a 28-day study, a 30-day study. So within 30 days, any patient that's admitted to the study will already be finishing the study.
So you're going to have data. So basically, you're going to have data roughly within 6 months.
Oh yes, before if we look and observe, we might have data by July.
By July, this is July. So we're in.
It's not completing 15 patients, but we can see whether it's working or not.
Okay, so basically,
in the meantime, we're going to file patents, and we're going to publish the data from Italy. So the world is going to know what we have. What is the basis of the human study? So that article is being written as it's going to be published in a major neuroscientific journal.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's going to be a lot of news flow between now and July when you're going to have the data, because the studies
human data.
Okay, so the human data, so that's going to be in July, which would be major milestone. We're already in April, almost in April now. So that's April, May, June, July, roughly 4 months.
Yes.
Roughly 4 months you'll have data. So that's going to be a massive milestone. I mean, that could be this. That could actually be a I don't know. Could the stock by then? I mean, I'm again. I know you're the doctor. I'm kind of thinking more of as from the investor side. But the stock right now is what is it? It's 8 cents or so, 7-8 cents. Market cap is under 10 million. How much? Actually, let me ask you this: how much should a company be worth at that stage of the game in phase 2? What is that? What's the typical valuation for, based on what you have, which is orphan drug, potential for other indications? I mean, psilocybin, et cetera.
There are huge markets out there. The autism market, the GDP of autism is almost $6 billion a year. I think that includes care at home and other things. I think the drug market for autism per patient is almost $1,500 a year. That's antidepressants. This drug could take over the market. I'm not here. Look, I'm a good doctor. I'm a good surgeon. I'm a good drug developer. I'm not a crystal ball seer. So I can't go on record and say where I think the stock should be.
Right.
On the other hand, I had other companies. Medco went from, we were purchased by King Pharmaceuticals at $36 to $38 a share for almost $500 million. I had another company, Exonics, which merged, it was an Alzheimer's disease, merged out into Torrey Pines Therapeutics and Raptor Pharmaceuticals. One of the drugs is now under study at Harvard Medical School. Success is there.
Right.
It's just
so basically
to develop your drug.
Okay, so I think, so based on comps, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. Okay, so let's say the market you're going after is $1 billion plus, which it's definitely bigger than $1 billion. The autism market in general, like potentially, and other because again, investors would biotech invest, healthcare pharma investors, they're looking at this. Okay, it's an orphan drug, but the off-label is really that's the thing they're going to focus on, and so let's call it $1 billion plus. Phase 2. is it safe to say it's worth, 100 million? Why
Right.
not?
I mean,
At phase 2.
I think that's easily attainable.
Yeah. So phase 2, 100 million bucks. I mean, we've seen, phase 2, biotech pharma companies with big, yeah. So basically that would be a 10 bagger. I mean, so there was a clear path. I know, Marvin, I just realized it took us, I'm looking at it, it took us 38 minutes. It took us 38 minutes to get to this point.
Let me say this. Once you have a positive phase 2A study, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm excited about the potential for the company I work for. You can immediately apply for sympathetic approval. You may not have to go and do another phase 2 study or a phase 3. You can ask the Canadian authority for sympathetic approval and do a post-marketing safety study. This has been done before. So the value could go up even more, but I don't want to think that way. I want to take one step at a time, and I want to prove that the pathway we're taking is the proper one.
Yeah. Okay. But so basically, bottom line is, which is I think what investors want to know is, okay, what's the path for the company to be at 10x? So we're looking at potentially. Again, this is not, we're not here, but there is a path to get there in the next, let's call it 4 months. I'll even say 6 months, just to give it a little, based on once you get these milestones that we talked about, getting the pills, getting the study of Health Canada, et cetera. So there's a clear path. You've done this before. Marv, I want to kind of get into your background. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Where did you start from? Because you're a doctor. You're an MD, right? You're a legitimate doctor. You're not like a PhD. You're like a real doctor.
I think I'm legitimate. I was born in New York, in Brooklyn. I went to medical school at New York University School of Medicine. I'm currently on the board of governors of the medical school for clinical research. I then did my general surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. I was drafted initially into the Marine Corps in Vietnam as a surgeon, and I was then transferred to National Institutes of Health, where I spent my military obligation making discoveries in the immunology system. Some of my discoveries gave me prestige that allowed me to be accepted for the urology transplant program at UCLA Medical Center. I then went on, then I was pursued by Bristol Myers International to develop a once-a-day cephalosporin antibiotic for kidney disease and bladder disease. And then I formed the company, co-founded a company called Medco Research. We did work for Bristol Myers. We did work for Mead Johnson. We did work for the Wellcome Foundation. We did the NDA. We were part of the NDA on the largest selling antidepressant in the world today, called Wellbutrin, for the Wellcome Foundation. We went on to develop other drugs and medical devices, and then we decided to go to universities to seek out technology that they were developing. And we acquired an adenosine franchise from University of Virginia. And then we found out that these adenosine compounds were anti-arrhythmic drugs. So we formed a relationship with Duke University, and we started proving out that the adenosine receptors were prime targets of the adenosine program that we had from the University of Virginia. And the company went on the New York Stock Exchange, and ultimately was acquired by a large pharmaceutical company, King Pharmaceuticals. And we moved our company to Raleigh-Durham, and it's still in Raleigh-Durham. And King Pharmaceuticals runs that company in Raleigh-Durham, which is right near Duke University.
Okay, so Marvin, so Medco, the company you found, it was a contract research organization, basically.
We were the largest in the world at one time. We formed in 1982. No one else was doing contract research work. I mean, you didn't have the par excels or the PPDs. We were the largest, or one of the largest at that time. And we were well paid, but the big money is not in working for others as a contract research CRO. The big money is in drug ownership, and that's the formula that we're using in Nova.
But it's interesting because, essentially as a contract research organization, essentially you're basically You're actually doing the research. So notice that is the process. So you're very process oriented in getting the job done for drug approval. I mean, this is the
Pfizer needs CROs.
right.
Pfizer has a contract with them. They don't have everybody in house. They want to do diabetes. They want to do Parkinson's disease. They want to do Alzheimer's. They want to develop vaccines. They can't do it all. As big as they are, they need contract research organizations to help them. And they also don't have all the best discovery in the biggest pharmaceutical companies. They're going to look for companies such as Nova in the future, depending on the results we have.
Marv, I
That's
want to ask you.
what the future is. The future is acquisitions by big pharma.
Okay, Marv, I want to ask you this. So the Medco research. So I think basically investors want to know is what's this guy's track record? Like how well have these stocks done? So Medco, I think you said
sorry,
this is
Jack, I lost you.
okay. So yeah, we got a kind of a slow internet here. Okay, so the question is,
I hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Medco research, the IPO I think was like $1 or $2. It was a unit. I don't remember at the time they were like it would be like 2 shares and a warrant or whatever it is. So it was like it came out at $1 or $2. And you said the unit actually went to $100 in 6 months.
Yeah, what we did is we were a biotech company in 1980, 81, 82. It was hard to finance. Biotech was a new concept. We were pleased to meet a gentleman by the name of Morty Davis, who owned an investment banking firm called D.H. Blair, and he
legendary.
Yes, in fact he went to Brooklyn College. He had his Phi Beta Kappa key on. I remember going to his office. He was very proud of his bio. I said, "Look, I got Morty," and he said, "I want to finance your company," and he gave us $5 or $6 million. It was a unit deal, I think, at $2.50 a unit, 2 shares plus a couple of warrants. And what happened is we started having these big contracts come in from Bristol Myers, from the Wellcome Foundation. The units went in 6 months to $110 a unit, which was unheard of. I think Morty
back
made
then.
40 on the initial offering itself. And then and of course, when the stock comes down, people sell, and then we had to prove ourselves. And then you start developing.
Right. That's the way it always works. The market. Once, which is the exciting thing about these kind of emerging growth stocks, especially in the biotech area, is once you show some data, the market starts to extrapolate, and then what happens is, it's just the way it always works. Is once you show some really good data, the stock really tends to overshoot. So, when I was saying 10x, whatever it is, it's very possible that, it can go up, it can go crazy. I mean, if you have a really great data, it can go up 50x. Of course, by then, it's going to overshoot, and then, it comes down, and then you really have to deliver the results, then commercialization, and then of course it goes back. So it's this roller coaster. So it's
some don't do that. Commercialization is big pharma. They have
Yeah.
sales force. They have the marketing. Don't fall in love and hold on to your compound. If someone else is interested, the whole basis of why I'm involved in this is to leave a legacy to healthcare. Autism is a devastating disease for family, for patient, for society. You come into the world with your name, you leave with your name. If I could leave a drug for autism, unbelievable for me. Great. I mean, that's all I want. Whether it's 1 bag or 100 bag or 1,000 bag, or I want to leave a product that helps people.
Excellent. Marv, I want to ask you, so one of the questions I think investors have is they have you, in the last like year or so, the psychedelic stocks, it became like a sector almost, became very hot. Then a lot of things crashed. Things are they're coming back now, but are you a psychedelic stock? Are you a bio? Like, I think the novice investor, when they look at this and they're saying you're developing this drug based on a psychedelic compound, based on psilocybin, what's going on here? Like, why psilocybin? Explain to us this.
Yeah, I've dealt with this issue when I first came on board. Before the original company was Pills Bioscience, which was acquired by Nova Mentis Life Science Corp. I had to deal with that. And I looked at the industry. I said, God, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here, you know? These are people, I'm sorry to say it, sitting on the top of a mountaintop, contemplating their navels and taking psilocybin and cannabis. I said, that's not where I want to be. I'm a drug developer. Nature is absolute. Psilocybin is in food. I want to develop psilocybin, and I want to do it synthetically. I'm not going to do an isolate. I'm not going to do an extraction, and I'm not going to create hallucinogenic side effects. That's not the answer. You put a patient in a room, and then you think that you have to move the brain from one space to another, and then you don't retreat for 3 or 4 months. And when the patient's in that room having that hallucinogenic experience, he has to be under the care of a psychiatrist for 8 hours or 6 hours, taking blood pressure. Is that the future of autism? No, no. I want small microdose therapy. In addition, there's something called the entourage effect. The mushroom that has psilocybin also has other tryptamine derivatives. If psilocybin was the end all, why would the mushroom have baeocystin and aruginacin, other tryptamine derivatives that are very similar to psilocybin? It's because they work together. Why do you eat a carrot? You don't extract the vitamin E from the carrot, you eat a carrot. Yeah, the pharmaceutical industry makes billions of dollars about vitamin E and vitamin C, but that's not what I want to do. I want to show that nature has the answer. And we're now going to be starting on in the entourage formulation. We filed patents on it, and we're going to be taking psilocybin, baeocystin, and aruginacin, and repeating the same experiments we did in autism and Fragile X. That's the future of this company, not just a one-trick pony called psilocybin. And if our Health Canada study is exactly what I expect it to be, you're going to see repetitive microdose therapy with no side effects, low cost, not having a psychiatrist watch the patient for 6 hours, running a big bill up. I'm sorry, I think the industry is in the wrong place. And I don't think, I'll make a prediction. Oh, I'm wrong, but I don't think drugs with hallucinogenic side effects are going to be approved by the FDA or the European Medicines Agency or Health Canada. I think drugs with that kind of side effect won't be approved.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other, based on the research, based on kind of the research you're doing. What other indications could you be going after? You mentioned potentially other neurological things. You mentioned Alzheimer's. I think when we first spoke before this interview, I think you mentioned you said something about diabetes and like a couple. There's a lot of different possibilities. Can you go into some of the potential indications and things down the road in terms of the pipeline that you're going to have?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you're looking at receptor actions in the brain. A lot of diseases are very similar in origin, neuroinflammatory, whether it's multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease. People with Parkinson's disease have memory problems. Alzheimer's disease, memory problems. Lou Gehrig's disease, memory problems. So there's receptors in the brain that psilocybin may be working on. They may not be just the receptor for autism. The same receptor may be involved in another neurologic disorder like Parkinson's disease. We have to find that out. So we're going to be doing some more basic experiments to look at other receptor actions in the brain. Those are being organized as we speak with our scientists in Italy. With respect to the receptor, we found, and also there's scientific evidence, that the 5-HT, hydroxytryptamine receptor, is very similar to this 5-HT2C receptor for diabetes. Why? Is psilocybin also increasing sensitivity of the body to insulin? We don't know that, and I'm very interested once we get beyond the Fragile X, get our drug approved, to do some research into diabetes, because the 5-HT1A receptor is very near the 5-HT2C receptor. So we have a lot to learn. And as Plato said, you never know the answer, you only approach the answer. I think we're going to approach many answers with our psychedelic program. We don't have just one drug. As I said earlier, we have arugination, baeocystin, and we're going to look at these other tryptamine derivatives in other disorders.
Okay, so potentially, okay, but the first thing is you're looking to develop a drug for treating Fragile X, and then which potentially is going to have the off label. So potentially we could see a $1 billion market opportunity there. But then from there you're going after you're going to be continuing doing research for other diseases, other indications.
You have to walk before you run. So the first thing we're going to focus, prove that our technology and our approach to the technology is the proper one. Get the drug approved for Fragile X syndrome, get a sympathetic approval for commercialization and marketing, and then at the same time, you'll see it, because we'll be publishing the paper in the next 2 or 3 months for the results in Fragile X and autism, and you'll see further research very shortly by the summer as an entourage formulation. We're beginning the entourage testing as we speak.
So in theory, the drug, let's say you get very far along in the Fragile X drug, potentially you could license it to a partner like, I don't know, like Lilly or somebody else in the neuro type space, and get a massive payday and royalties, of course, and then you continue doing research on other indications. So I mean, this is not a one-trick deal. This is like this could be for the next 5-10 years a big pharma company.
Yeah,
a drug development company, I should say.
I mean, in my company Axonics, we had a relationship with Novartis, with Roche. Sirona was our partner in Axonics, the largest neuroscience biotech company in Switzerland. Sirona was now part of Merck AG of Germany. They were acquired for, I think, 10 billion euros. I was part of a lot of that development. So when you mention Lilly, you have to know and choose carefully which of the companies whose portfolio and spaces are involved in the area you're researching.
Marvin, I'm not as deep in the weeds as you are. I just remember that name because they had a depression drug or something. That was a big thing for them, right? Lilly or
but the biggest area is probably for us in neurosciences, Roche and Novartis.
Roche. Okay. So all right. So there's a lot of stuff down there. Okay.
And Fujisawa, which I had a relationship. See, I know all these companies, so. I've been there before, so we will be going down that same pathway. But at the right moment, you got to know when to approach them.
Okay, excellent. So, Marv, thank you very much. We're going to have you and the CEO. We're going to have Will, the CEO of the company, back maybe next week for a live stream with audience questions. So we'll get into some live audience questions. So anybody watching, save up your questions for next week, and we'll see you then. Thank you again, Marvin.
Yeah, I love questions and answers. That's the most important thing. Then you know what the listener wants to know. So I'm open for that, and I look forward to being on your program again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marv.